Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we are back for podcast number 118. I want to start off by thanking our sponsor, Merrick Health. Merrick is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. They do this by two different ways. You know, as you guys know, I'm a big advocate of having blood work done. I personally think it needs to be done on a quarterly basis just to check for vitamin deficiencies, hormone balance, irregularities, and stuff like that. They have one track to where you just go on, set up whatever labs that you want to have done, wait for the requisition, go get the labs pulled. They send you the results and you can review it yourself or review it with your doctor. They have custom labs set up for the Table Talk platform or the Table Talk podcast, which is americhealth.com/tabletalk. They have another track to where if you don't know what you're looking at, they'll set you up with a patient care coordinator, which will help determine what tests that you should get done or need to get done. And then they'll walk you through the process on the test. And then if you need any supplementation or if it's a prescription they need, they'll take care of that. So I want to thank americhealth.com and provide you with their discount code, which is 10% off the first order, americhealth.com, discount code, Table Talk. Elite FTS obviously is another sponsor of this. We offer 10% off your first order with a discount code Table Talk. We also have limited edition apparel, which we just made another drop today, which is the heavyweight hood. Do we have that to toss up there real quick? All right, yeah, I get it, guys. It's summertime, and it's a heavyweight hood. So in full transparency, I kind of missed it with the heavyweight hood. But everybody needs to have a hood that they leave in their truck, they leave in their car for cold winter or summer nights, you know, or you walk into the AC and you're freezing your nuts off because you've been out in the heat all day long. So this is what this is for. This is launching now, today. It's a limited edition item, so they don't last long. So go over to elitefts.com, limited edition, and pick up the heavyweight hood. Now let's get on with the show. My guest today is Matt Brown. So I've talked to Matt a couple times over the last decade or whatever it's going to be. I remember seeing him once or twice when I stopped in a Westside to see Louie many years ago. And then, what was it, March when you came out to see Brian before the last fight? He came out to see Brian Carroll and we talked a little bit. We talked about the podcast. We talked about some other ventures that you're going on. And I found some common ground as far as a little bit of mentality that I wanted to sit down and talk to Matt about. In full transparency, I'm not a fight fan, man. So this isn't going to be, no, I like fighting, man. I like fighting, but I enjoy watching. Louie would sit down and, you know, I'd watch it with him, but I'm not real. I don't watch a whole lot of sports.
You're not a fanboy.
No, I'm not a fanboy.
Like you like fighting, you're just not.
Oh, I like fighting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, okay.
I grew up getting my ass kicked all the time. So I got my ass kicked all the time. So I learned what it was like to be on the ground and not know what to fucking do.
Right.
You know, and that kind of led to wrestling, then it led to weight training, then it led to getting bigger, then it led to going back and a little redemption that, you know, I probably shouldn't have done. But so, yes, I understand fighting. I like fighting. You know, I've always had this mentality that I just want to, we'll just leave it at that, you know, just, you know,
just chip on your shoulder.
A little bit, but even before all that, it's like, just leave me the fuck alone, you know, that kind of mentality. So I get that, you know, so, and then going and watching some of your bouts and the highlights, and it's, I don't know the styles, the moves, all that other kind of stuff, but I know that this, to me, as I watch it, it's not so much a sport as it's an art. Right? So it's how you can probably explain it a little better, because the there's so many different things going on. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that you got to be prepared for, and there's different styles, and you got to know what the opponent's style is, but then you got to match whatever that's going to be. You know, it's that was intriguing. You know, that's intriguing when I watch all that. But then I have a wrestling background, you know, so I understand that. But then all this other stuff kind of gets out of that realm of my knowledge base of what that is. So no, I'm not the fanboy, you know, so I'm not going to have those fanboy questions and the things that you're normally used to. You know, I want to talk about the training. I want to talk about the mindset, the nutrition, you know, that kind of stuff. Because when we were talking last time you were out here, your knowledge in that is far more expansive than what I saw looking through some of the interviews that I'm seeing. It's like, you know, what do you think about this and this and this and this fight? Or what, you know, it's like people are trying to pit you guys against each other, which doesn't seem to be the reality of what I would think is in the sport.
Right.
You know, it's what they show, but it's probably not necessarily true. So, and there are some questions that I threw out there that people, you know, want answers to. But so what I'm going to lead in with here is how did you get into fighting, right? So how did you get in? Well, there's two things, right? There's fighting, then there's the professional fighting.
Sure.
Right. So let's go back to, because I did see a quote where, you know, you fought a lot, you know, when you were a kid. So I think was there bullying going on? Was there shit like that?
I got beat up a lot as a kid.
Okay.
But I was that guy that would always fire back, you know what I mean? Like bullies would talk shit or whatever, and I was just the kid that wouldn't stand down. You know, so I got my ass kicked many times for it, you know, sometimes by a single person, sometimes by multiple people, but, you know, that they would mess with me once, so.
Yeah.
You know, and I've kind of kept that mentality through my whole fight career. Like, you know, I may win, I may lose. Obviously, I'm trying to win every time, but you're not going to want to fight me again. And that's kind of, I think, where that comes from, because that's how it was with the bullies growing up. They'd push me around. I'd talk back. I'd say, let's fucking go right now. Maybe they kicked my ass, but they didn't want to fight me again because I would come right back after them. Why
do you think they were coming after you in the first place?
I'm like I think a lot of it's just I'm kind of a timid guy. Not timid, introverted. Kind of keep to myself, you know, and I don't I don't really like put myself out there a lot, you know. But
are you talking junior sports, high? Are you talking high
all
school?
Through,
junior
yeah,
high?
Both, yeah. But you know, I was excelling in sports, and then, well, okay, so in middle school, junior high, yeah, that was probably a lot more me being introverted, yet excelling at sports. Like, I'm fucking these guys up in the wrestling room. I'm fucking these guys up in the football field. Track, I was really good at track. And then, but that constant bullying, that constant pushing got me out of that also, away from sports. It just pushed me away from it, and I didn't relate to those guys, you know. I didn't.
The team sports.
Yeah. I didn't feel comfortable with them, so I actually quit all sports by my sophomore year, and so I think the bullying maybe kind of started then, because now I kind of stepped away from that, and I started hanging out with the troublemakers, you know.
Before getting to that, was the same in wrestling as it was in the other sports?
What do you mean?
That what you're talking about is, I think I hear a little bit of background noise from the podcast, but. For me, there's kind of the same story, right? But wrestling it was more an individual sport, so I was cool with that. Like, I mean, I got my ass kicked first couple of years, but after I started training, things changed. Now, soccer, you know, shit like that, I didn't fit in, right? Because it's like this team thing. So it's interesting to me that you wrestling didn't keep you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, I guess that was kind of unique to my situation, because my cousin was actually stud wrestler. He was went to states every year, and in Ohio, that's saying something.
Oh yeah.
And he was kind of like in tight with all of them. And then when I kind of started falling out of sports a little bit and kind of only doing wrestling, like he started kind of bullying me a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, he's my cousin, you know, so it was like kind of family friendly bullying. But then that kind of pushed me away from wrestling, because he was like actually excelling better than me. You know, so, and just like the entire family dynamic was, you know, I would have to get into the whole other thing about that, but the whole entire family dynamic, I was just kind of feeling pushed away from my entire family, and he was part of that family, and he was the wrestler. So it was just,
I get it.
yeah.
So with the headphones are doing some weird stuff. With the family dynamic, when the earlier years, right? So before that, was that the family dynamic that was creating the issues of?
Yeah, so basically, when I talk about that, so I grew up in an uber small town, Bowersville, Ohio. No one's heard of it.
No, I don't know where it's okay. Small as fuck.
Yeah, population of
Yeah.
200. My dad was a machinist. Most of the people were farmers and, you know, just small town people. Like, I'd never seen a skyscraper till I was like over 20 years old. I'd never been on airplane. Yeah, I didn't know like what a big city was. So I was kind of, the situation I was in, it was kind of like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be a machinist because that's what your dad does. My other brothers, I'm one of three. I have an older brother and a younger brother. I'm the middle. They were not mechanically inclined or anything. They're like my one brother's a lawyer, my one brother's an artist. Kind of a crazy dynamic, but they had no chance of doing that. I was the kid that, like, I was rebuilding dirt bikes when I was like 12 years old, you know, so that was like kind of my path in life, and there wasn't another path for me.
Now, this was your dad's place?
Yeah.
So you felt like you had this predetermined
It was
life.
predetermined. Yeah. And I was like, dude, this isn't what I want to do, man. I'm meant for big things, you know, and I knew it within myself. I was like, I'm going to be a famous motherfucker one day. And I knew it. I don't know if I'm famous now or whatever, and fame's not all it's cracked up to be either.
Yeah.
But, you know, in my head, I'm like, bro, like, this is not me. This is not what I want to do with my life. Even though I do love working on stuff still, but like as a side hobby, you know, and I still build stuff all the time. Fuck this last week I've been remodeling my whole basement, you know? It's like a fun thing on the side. But my point is that just kind of, I knew that there was way more out there in the world that I wasn't having the ability to get exposed to, that I wasn't exposed to, and I wanted to discover it.
And so that frustration came out with the rage when the people were bullying you. It's just, this is your shot to let this shit out.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's not easy to get out of a small town like that, right? So that rage and frustration turned into getting drunk and partying.
Okay. So where did that lead?
Well, that doesn't match up with wrestling.
No, not at all. That's
right?
why I'm trying to put these pieces together, because
so,
you made this big jump earlier. Like, okay, there's this sport and there's this wrestling, there's this outlet, and then, you know, there's this
well,
crash.
it kind of turned into, you know, none of this. In that small town, again, you don't see how wrestling could get you out of there, or football, or any of these sports. You don't see that. Very few, if any, you know, really make it out like that. So it kind of, in my mind, realistically, what it came down to is at the end of a school day, it was like, okay, you can go sweat with the guys and work your ass off, or you can go smoke a bong, drink at 40, and maybe get laid. I was like, well, I know what my choice is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't really a whole lot more. And again, like, I didn't relate to those guys. Like, and, you know, wrestlers and football and everything, I mean, they kind of bully the younger kid.
No, it's a different clique, man.
And it's not a bad thing, right? It's a fucking good thing. But I certainly, like, took it the wrong way. You know, I was like, well, fuck all these motherfuckers, you know, because I just wanted to fight them, you know? And I absolutely, like, I tried to get into martial arts and shit when I was a kid. My mom was a uber Christian lady, still is, very conservative Christian. And to her, martial arts was like, you know, kind of what you see on TV. You know, she's like, oh, that's cultish, or, you know, it's not going to be good. It's not a Christian lifestyle or whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that chance. So I was like, you know, well, fuck it. I'm just going to get drunk. Fuck you all.
And then how long did, I mean, that, at some point in time there, you found fighting again, right? So there's,
well,
so say that's what, 18, 17?
No, about 20, 21.
No. When the drugs, the alcohol and all that. 14. So that went all through high school.
Oh, yeah.
Then past high school.
Yeah.
And then what was the catalyst that?
So I overdosed on heroin. I believe I was 21 at the time, maybe 22.
Was that your DOC? Was that your drug of choice?
No, I wasn't a big heroin guy, to be honest. Like, I'd tried it maybe 3 or 4 times. I just got a bad batch, I guess, one time, or a good batch maybe one time. Maybe I had bad batches before, right?
I don't know what that overdose was.
Yeah. So I end up in a hospital. I was very fortunate. The lady that was with me, she was a nurse, so she seen the signs and she knew what was happening, so she took me to a hospital. Anyway, so that was a huge catalyst, but I was like such a young, dumbass kid. I was like, I didn't stop partying right then. I was like, well, I'm not gonna do heroin again. And then I probably like went and did coke that night, you know?
Yeah.
Like, well, this won't kill you, right?
Yeah.
So, but I also got lucky that one of my friends, this is how I got into fighting. One of my friends was supposed to fight in Chillicothe. I think it was a Eagles Club or Lions Club or Veterans Hall, whatever. And so I go with them to see the fight. I'm like,
now, is he a drug addict too? I mean, you're skipping a point here. Like, how do you go from being
we
a
were
drug
partying.
addict? So you're both partying.
Oh yeah.
And then it was just like, hey,
yeah. I mean, we were all coked up while we're going there, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And he's supposed to fight that night. His guy ended up pulling out. And this is literally like what you see in the movies. You know, there's people smoking cigars, like betting on the fights. There's no commission back then. So, and they go, the announcer said, you know, anybody want to fight the champion? You know. Anybody, you know, the champion, whatever. And I was all coked up, and I stood up. I was like, fuck yeah, I'll fight this motherfucker. So I went over to the table. I paid $30 to enter. They said, all right, you got 2 hours. You're going to be fighting. Went across the street. There was a sporting goods store. Bought a mouthpiece. There was a restaurant across the street also. And they had a microwave.
Yeah.
So I boiled the mouthpiece. Come back, my buddy that didn't end up fighting, he let me borrow his cup and his shorts and fought that night. Beat the dude's ass. Beat the
First
shit
time.
out of first time.
So you no training or anything
trained,
like that?
not even trained a day.
Well,
in my
I
life.
should step back and say, well, who was the dude? Like, what kind of fight was this?
So he was, what they had told me was he was a tough man champion.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I'll just take him down then, right? He actually came to take me down, and I beat the shit out of him on the ground for a little bit, like, you know, so I'm like on my back, like swinging at him and punching him, and he's like, I remember looking in his eyes like he couldn't believe that I'm hitting him. You know? He's just like, what are you doing? I'm like, aren't we fighting? You know? So I'm like hitting him, and finally he puts his head down, and I just grabbed a guillotine and finished the fight, and he tapped out like right away. Claimed afterward that his calf cramped, and that's why he tapped, but you know, whatever. So anyway, so I went back a couple weeks later after that. Got coked up again, like, you know, well, this must be the way to go, right? And I fought twice in one night. The next time I won the first one, and then the second guy, his opponent didn't show up, and apparently this guy, I still remember his name to this day, Dusty Keplinger. He was supposed to go pro after this, and I had no idea. I'm just like, dude, I'll fight all you motherfuckers. I don't give a shit. And he beat the living fuck out of me.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him in the back after, and he goes, man, he said, you're a tough motherfucker. He said, I could not knock you out for nothing. He said, you know, you got some talent, bro. You should really come train with me or something. Well, that was when I finally decided, okay, I mean, I took a bad beating, so I was like, okay, I need to get to a gym and actually train. And so I moved to Columbus, Ohio. My brothers already lived here. They were going to college. So I said, okay, well, you know, get away from the drugs, the alcohol, the partying. I want to pursue this, and this is what I love more than anything I've ever done before in my life. This is my passion, and I'm going to succeed in this or I'm going to die trying. And that's all there is to it. There's no turning back now. I'm moving to a new place. I'm changing my life. This is all I'm going to do, period. And I haven't looked back since. I got to a gym.
So what part of that whole fight, right? I mean, the fight, getting your ass kicked, I get it. That's one thing, right? You're humbled. Right, you know, because you think you're a bad motherfucker, then you get humbled, man, and it's especially if he's not knocking
when
you out.
Realize, like, you know, most people, I think, when you watch a fight, you don't really see the skill, right, until you experience it. When you experience like someone hitting you and you cannot hit them back, you cannot figure out why. What is going on? Why can I not fucking hit you?
Especially if you keep going. Like if you keep going, you don't get knocked out.
Yeah.
You keep going, then.
And you could kind of tell they're toying with you a little bit, and they're setting you up, but you don't know what they're setting up. And
so what I'm trying to find is there's a passion that hit at some point in time, like not going down is part of that, right? Then the other part of it is like, fuck this, I'm gonna get this son of a bitch before this is over.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep going and going and going. You know, so it all kind of becomes just a different addiction, right? Was the addiction of, you know, that, you know, like there's something you just saw something inside you that just was a little bit of a fire when you were younger and just
Yeah.
fucking ignited.
Yes.
Because then you're like, no, wait a minute. You know, if I did this and didn't get knocked out, you know, and got better, you know, then I could be the guy.
Exactly.
I could have been him fucking somebody else.
I couldn't put it better myself.
Okay.
That's a perfect way to put it. And
see, I was wondering if it was that or if it was him saying, hey, look, come train with me.
no, like I didn't even respect him.
I got it. Got it. Yeah.
I was actually kind of like, you couldn't knock me out, you fucking pussy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then I got to an actual gym. There's a couple of pros. I actually just reconnected with one of them again the other day, Eli Ayers, and Braden Workman was there, Dorian Price, who's still my coach today. And then when I got in that gym, that was when I truly got my ass kicked. That was like the actual ass kicking, because these guys are just fucking these guys are good pros.
Yeah.
These guys are getting ready. All those guys were almost to the UFC at that point, which
Yes.
and that day the UFC was like, you know, very fucking rare to get to.
No,
It was
yeah,
tough, you know?
yeah. I do remember watching some of those with Lou back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. It's a different world back then. Man.
Yes.
So, you know, these guys, they're outboxing me, they're out kicking me, they're out Muay Thai me, they're out clinching me, they're out wrestling me, they're out jiu-jitsu and grappling me, you know. So now I'm like, okay, it was sort of a Dunning-Kruger effect, and that was where I hit the peak right there, and I was like, okay, I know nothing.
Yes.
You know, I said, okay,
Yeah.
now I truly know nothing, because I thought I knew a little bit before, right? I thought, I'm a bad motherfucker, I can do this, you know. And then when I got in the gym and I realized how much there is to this, how deep this shit goes, you know, with real pros, but it just sparked my passion even more. I mean, it just got me deeper and deeper in love with it. And then I fought 2 weeks after I trained with them the first time, those guys. They got me a fight. First day I walked in there, they're like, hey, you want to fight in 2 weeks? And all right. And that was the first time I felt true nerves, right? The fights before, I'm partying, I'm coked up, and, you know, I think I'm the fucking shit. But now I know how bad it can be. And now I'm actually preparing for something.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm doing all the right things, at least for 2 weeks, you know. But, you know, I'm not drinking, I'm not partying. And I still remember to this day, it was at Promo West back then. It was my first fight. Trained for 2 weeks. And I'm warming up in the back, and I couldn't lift my hands up to my face. I felt like my gloves were fucking 50-pound weights, you know, because I'm just shaking, so fucking scared. You know, and I go out there. I ended up winning the fight and choked him unconscious. And just like even fighting today, it's the exact same feeling, man. You're that scared before, then you go out there and do it, and the second you walk out, you just want to fucking go do it again, you know?
Oh yeah, you walk into the fire, man. It's like embracing the fire. With that first day that you were in the gym, it's going back to when I was wrestling. There was a pivotal time to where I had to decide, just because of weight class issues, is it football because I was a lineman, or is it wrestling? I didn't want to wrestle the super heavyweights. I mean, think of how it goes. You know, like I think at the time it was like 181, and then 300 pounds.
Sure.
You know, there wasn't a whole lot in there.
And what weight were you?
180, whatever it was, the 181.
So you were right there.
Right there. So the next step up was, no, I practice with these guys. I don't want to, but I was basically, you know, I went from being the fish basically the whole time to, you know, just killing everybody.
Nice.
But only because I mastered one or two skills, one or two moves. That's it.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
And that's all it took until I went to an open tournament, right? Then I'm getting fucking teched out, whatever you want to call. I mean, they're just fucking with me. Like they're running the score up, then they let me get a takedown, then they run it, and this just goes on for the whole freaking match. And then you leave, and I wanted to do it so much more. It was that the same type of feeling that you felt when you went in there, because I thought I was the shit, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, no, wait, oh shit. Now this wasn't no longer high schools and shit like that. This was an open tournament, and I was just being fucking toyed around. And it was humbling, you know, for one thing, but it also made me want to know more, you know, and to learn more, which pissed me off even more.
Right.
You know, I had influence pushing me to a different direction, which if I have any regret in my life, it's probably that. You know, that I should have went that other direction, because one's a team sport, one's an individual sport. What I end up in, fucking powerlifting, which is an individual sport.
Right.
You know, and
so you ended up playing football then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went that route because I had to go up, you know, so now 240 or whatever it's going to be. Different story. But I remember that moment because, man, it's like, man, I can go and win states. I can get a scholarship. I can do all this shit. No, scholarship probably not, because my grades are fucking awful. But but when I hit that open thing, it was like, oh shit. You know, now I need to start training at the college. I need to train around better people. You know, people know more than 2 moves, you know, and stuff like that, because I was stronger than everybody else. But what I'm trying to get at is, when you were in that gym, was that kind of like it was with that, you said the Dunning-Kruger effect, like you realize, oh shit, you know, I don't know anything.
I mean, I was a brawler before that. I didn't have any skill at all.
Yeah.
I just, you know, was a tough kid with a lot of heart, and that takes you a long way, even at the highest level. I mean, you know, just heart and toughness can take you a long fucking way. But it, you know, there's a peak to that for sure. There's an end to that, where it doesn't matter how tough you are anymore, and that's where the sport part of it comes in, right? Because if it's a fight to the death, that toughness might win you, you know, fight to the death. But when you got a time limit and you got rules and you got judges, which are fucking idiots, scoring and saying who did what, you know, that's when that toughness peaks out, right? And there's someone that knows how to play the game, right?
Yes.
There's someone that knows how to get the points and
all right, so
that's
where I see the sport would come into, where I'm sitting there seeing this more as an art.
Yeah.
There's judges.
Individually, it's an art.
Yeah, the judges make it a sport, though.
Yeah.
Because I get what you're
and
saying.
I do think powerlifting is probably very similar. There's an art individually, right? Everybody's going to have their own body type, their own mental type, that's going to get them through every session. It's going to get them the most out of themselves. And that's what I try to focus on the most personally within myself, is how do I squeeze all the juice out in this next hour or two, right? And for some people, since I've started coaching, I've realized this. Some people, you can squeeze that juice for 3 hours, 4 hours. Other guys, they only got 30 minutes of juice in them. Now that 30 minutes might be, you know, just as well as the 3 hours, but you know, everybody's a little different in that, right? And their creativity starts going down, or their focus, a lot of different things. So just learning how within yourself, and that's an art, right? That's why lifting, training, everything is an art and a science, right? Is we need to squeeze all the fucking juice we can to get the most out of ourselves. And how do we do that?
Yes. So when that got you basically into the sport, right?
Yeah.
So at what point did it become UFC? You know,
so like I said,
when did the big fight come? Let's put it that way.
So like I said, when the day that I walked in that gym, I said, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna die trying. I'm a martial artist for life. I married the sport. I tell every female that I've ever committed to in my life, I said, look, you're always gonna be second place. This is my fucking love. You know, I might love you, but I'm never gonna love you as much as this. This is me. So I was committed that day, whether it was UFC, whether it was whatever the fuck. I didn't give a fuck. I got lucky with the UFC, so I went out and just fought. I went to everybody else's hometown. I fucking traveled with by myself, cut weight by myself, didn't have coaches. I didn't give a fuck. I just said, dude, I just want to fight. I don't care. You know, it's a personal journey of mine. I went out, fought the most I could, but it gave me a lot of respect, right? So I actually moved to New York. My girlfriend lived up there, so I moved there and became personal trainer, because I was basically, I don't know, 5-6 years deep into this, and you know, not making a fucking dime.
No, you're just trying to pay bills.
Yeah. So I'm like, look, I got offered a really good job there as a personal trainer on the Upper West Side. So I said, okay, this is going to pay bills. Being a personal trainer, kind of, at least I'm in a gym all day. You know, so I kept fighting while I was there. But I was a personal trainer and a fighter now, and not just a fighter, right? Because for a long time I was just a fighter. I'd have a job for a month just so I could pay that month's bills, or next month's bills, and then just train the next month.
I got it, yeah.
I got to find another job for this next month.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, I was getting to the point where there was like some fights where like if I didn't win and I only got half my pay, which is how it works, right? If I didn't win, like I don't know how I'm eating this month, or I might be sleeping in my car, you know. So, and I just kind of got exhausted with that. So I ended up moving to New York. They had the Ultimate Fighter tryouts in Newark, maybe 6 months after I was there. and just fucking got on the show, man. I don't know how. Well, I kind of know how. So half of it is, okay, so I earned Dana's respect. He's seen my record, seen who I'd fought. I'd fought like former UFC guys and, you know, really, really tough guys. And Dana, he's pretty impressed with the record, but then they really care about like your personality, right? Like that's what they really care about. And I'm not a huge personality guy, I don't think. I'm not like a fucking character or, you know, charismatic or anything like that. But the producer, he asked me, he could tell I was being very truthful with him. And he asked me, he goes, you look like one of those, if you ever watched the show, he goes, you look like one of those guys that, you know, your girlfriend's going to call you and you're going to want to leave the show halfway through. You know, they try to get under your skin, right?
Yeah.
They try.
That pissed me off,
Yeah,
dude.
see, and it didn't bother me at all because I just told him the truth. I said, look, you can have my girlfriend if you get me on the show. I said, you could fuck her right now. I'll bring her in here and you can bend her over. Just get me on the show. And I was being truthful. Like I would have sacrificed her in a heartbeat for that, right? And you know, much respect to her, but that's where I was at. My head was at. And he said that line got me on the show. So, you know.
Well, it's just step back a little bit. I mean, you died, right? You had a heroin overdose, which basically you died, right? So then when you make a commitment to something like I'm going to do this or die, you know. So I don't think a lot of people, and I've talked about this before in past podcasts because I was this way with powerlifting. I don't think people really understand what being all in is.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it has its place in time, but it's also fucking scary too, right? So when we'll talk about business later, you know, sometimes people, you know, I'll look at different projects and it'll be like, do I really want to embark on this, right? Because my really all in is different than somebody else's all in. And I don't think they understand where the fuck I'm coming from with that, right? And it's different, right? So when you're coming back basically from the dead and then this is all in, you know, for the people that are listening, I'm throwing this out there because you're talking about your girlfriend, like, yeah, I mean, like, that's the mindset that's there. You know, it is what it is, you know, where that's what it drives, right? And it as you get older, it becomes, you know, I don't want to say more problematic, but you question more things. Like, do I really want to do this? People talk about balance and all this other stuff. It's like, well, do I really want to do this? Because if I do it, it's just going to be half-assed.
Yes.
Then what the fuck, you know?
Which was, I think you would agree, that's 1,000% the reason that Westside has always been what Westside is.
Yes.
And I tell a lot of people this. The example I use, like, look, Westside tells you everything they do. Louie writes fucking books on what he does. That, like, you can go, I mean, R.I.P. to Louie, but, you know, when he was alive, you could go talk to him and he would tell you everything on his mind that it took him 50 years to learn, and he's going to tell you in a couple hours. Like, there's zero secrets there. So why are they the strongest motherfuckers? Yeah. Because they will die for every fucking lift. Yeah, because
anybody, that's why I would do it, because half the other people that will listen to it, they're not going to fucking do it.
Yeah, they're not going to do it.
You kind of knew that. So.
And even if they do it, is, you know, one thing that I've learned, like, even if they'll do it, they're not going to do it with the intention.
No.
There's this completely different intention. Like, you know, I learned this in super training, right? There's your force max, and then there's your competition max, right? And then there's your like actual max if they hook up electrics to you and shit. Yeah. And when my short time training with like the morning crew, which I never trained directly with them, but I'd watch them and I would see like these guys are doing a competition max every fucking day. Like they're not doing a max effort. They're doing a competition max effort every fucking day they're in here. And that's a different world, right?
Oh, it is.
You do not see that at fucking your regular powerlifting gym.
No,
right?
No, not at all. So you get through the show, and then what happens after that? Is part of the winning of the show, is that the contract with the UFC?
Yeah.
What was the deal?
Yeah.
All right. So then what's that fight after that? You know,
my first fight in the UFC was with Matt Arroyo, which was a rematch. So he was begging to fight me. So I fought on the show at 185. You know, so I fought some big ass motherfuckers. I walk around at 185. And then Matt Arroyo was 170, and I beat him before the show. And he was already in the UFC before I was. So he was asking for a rematch in the UFC, and I was like, at 170, perfect, you know, works great for me. So I guess he was begging for it. And so I beat his ass again. And when you win the finals, that's when you actually get a contract.
All right, then how do the other fighters treat you? Because basically you took a different way in. So how do the other fighters see that as you took that other way in?
You know what? Every fighter kind of has their own path. You know, no one. I don't think anybody really judges the path that you took to get there. There's so many different ways to get there. Some people, you know, it's political shit. You know, some people work their ass off. Some people build their brand in other organizations. There's just so many multiple ways to get in.
Okay, and then what year was that, if you can remember?
2008.
2008, and then from there you've retired what, twice?
Once.
Once.
Yeah.
And then how long did that last?
I never like actually retired. It was, you know, there was just some personal shit going on between my personal life, and I had a torn ACL, and I had my third surgery on my ankle, all on the same leg. And I just didn't know if I'd ever be able to do the cardio again. Like, as I couldn't run. I couldn't even like walk through a fucking grocery store without limping my way out, you know. I brought crutches with me many times just because I couldn't put the weight on my ankle anymore. And after 3 surgeries, I was just like, how the fuck am I gonna do this? I couldn't kick pads anymore. I couldn't do anything. Fortunately, after all the surgeries, the rehab, all that shit, what fixed it was stem cells.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Did you, during this time period, did you know you would find a way back?
No.
No,
I didn't even believe the stem cells would help at all.
Okay, so with the crutches and all that other kind of stuff, you're just, how are you dealing with?
I'm just suffering through every day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm sure tons of, probably yourself and tons of powerlifters have been through it. And, you know, just every day is a battle. It's like, dude, I just got to do the best I can today. I got to figure out how to get through today, and hopefully it's fucking better tomorrow, right?
What was at the end of the path, though, in your mind at that time? Was it just to be able to live
gym.
life, open your gym? So it wasn't fighting. So it was, but then you started moving normal, right? At some point in time after the stem cells, you were able to start. I assume you opened your gym during this time period.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you're in the gym and you're starting to train and you're starting to.
And things start feeling better, and reignited my passion for the sport. And part of it was being around the kids in the gym, being around the young fighters and wanting to inspire them. And the kids inspire me more than anything, man.
So did your purpose for fighting change through that time?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it went from doing it for yourself to kind of like Louie trying to do it, you know, to make us be better. Yeah. He came back because of that reason.
Yeah, I think it just added a reason, not necessarily changed the reason.
Okay.
You know, just added more fuel to the fire.
All right. So then your record is what? You've had like 28 bouts, right?
More than that, I think. But
in the UFC.
Oh, yeah.
In the UFC. So if you were to, how many after, you know, if you just were to guess? Not like schoolyard, you know, fights and shit like that. That's
no, commission fights, I'd say total of around 50, counting amateur and pro.
Which ones would you say that you look back? How do I want to say this? I've also said this a few times on the podcast as well. You know, I've gone into surgeries I didn't know if I was going to come back out of, right? So while you're laying there and all that other kind of stuff, you know, people would always say, I'm sure you've heard this with the fighting, man, on your deathbed, you ain't going to be thinking about this shit. You're going to be thinking about this bullshit.
Yeah, you can fuck off
with
that.
Bullshit, right? Yeah. So when I think back, you know, I would think about certain training sessions, certain things. Which are some of the fights that you would remember, you know, at that point in time that you would look back on?
Eric Silva would probably be the number one.
Why is that?
I fought him in main event in Cincinnati. The most beautiful thing about it was all my family is from Kentucky. And I had more people at that fight from my family than my family reunion. So bringing my family together like that, you know, was something that I'm doing, was an amazing thing for me. Eating breakfast the next morning, and it was a great fight too. I mean, it was an absolute, you know, top like 20 UFC legendary fight, you know. So that was just amazing. My kids got to come into the octagon with me after the fight. So put all those pieces together, you know, main event, hometown, close to hometown, family there, A great fight. And that was the type of fight that I like to use for my own example, like to inspire kids, right? Because I got dropped right away in that fight. He kicked me in the liver, and I actually had a torn cartilage in my rib already, and I felt the liver and the rib, and then he's down there almost about to choke me out. I'm like turning red, and I don't even know what I was thinking in my head, but I didn't give up, you know what I mean? So it's just, one of those things you can use that for example to the kids, like, don't fucking give up, man.
Yeah. So what would be, what are some of the ones you look back on you're still pissed about? Not because of judges, just maybe ill performance or, just bad decisions.
I'd say probably there's two of them. Number one was Johnny Hendricks. I knew that was a bad fight for me. He was on a lot of steroids at the time, and everyone knows it. He knows it. I wouldn't even doubt he would admit it. I got injured in the camp at least 3 times. I didn't get to spar once during camp. I got sick the week of the fight. So I knew it was a bad matchup for me to start with. So it was just piles and piles. And my whole time, I'm just saying, dude, I'm not fucking backing out. I'm going to fight this motherfucker. I don't care what happens. And I should have just backed out. My coaches were telling me multiple times, back out. Like, dude, you can't even fucking, you can barely walk. I had a cut over my eye. And they're like, you can't even train, bro. Like, how you going to go fight this guy? Like, he's a good fighter.
I don't know your fight history, but have you ever pulled out of a fight?
One.
For that type of reason?
No. Okay, I guess 2. Both times were in a herniated disc in my back.
Okay, so that's
right before the fight, and I couldn't even stand up.
Yes.
Talk about not walking. I mean, you can't even get up out of bed.
Yeah.
Right? You know what it is, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I was here talking with Brian, right?
Yeah.
I've had these issues for a long time. But then the other one was Damian Maia, and that was that one for a completely different reason, because that one, it was a very, very big fight for me. It would have been a contender match. And I fucked up he's a jiu-jitsu master, right? A grappling master. He's a 4 or 5-time world champion. Everybody knows. He'll tell you exactly what he's going to do. He's going to try to take you down, choke you out, right? Like, there's no secrets about it. So what I did in that training camp was I trained only defensive jiu-jitsu. How do I not get choked out? And that's completely, in retrospect, the completely wrong way to train. You don't train for what he's going to do and try to defend it. I actually defended it very well. He chokes out most people, like in the first round. It took until the 3rd round to choke me out with like 30 seconds left. And he only choked me out because I went kamikaze, like escape, just like anything. I was like, all right, lost the fight. Like, let's just go. But I dropped him in the 2nd round, and I probably could have finished the fight right then. But I remember a little split second in my head questioning myself, because I hadn't trained any offense at all this entire camp, if that makes sense, right? Like my mind is not offensive, but I did. It was a what do they call it? A manifest prophecy or whatever, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'd practiced to defend what he's going to do. I defended what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So,
where you're traditionally more of an offensive.
1,000%, yeah. So I regret that, if you want to call it a regret. I mean, I don't necessarily regret it. You learn a lesson and everything. So, but it was a foolish way to train.
Yeah.
But that's why part of passing on the knowledge to others, right? Don't make the mistakes that I made.
Yeah. So as you're coming up through, it's the. Well, actually, I'm going to throw a couple more of the fighting things out here.
Yeah, it's good.
One of the questions was knocking the fucker out with the elbow. So that's what you're known for. I went and looked at it last night. I don't even know how I would answer this if I were you. Like, how did you feel after doing that? It's like, or when, to me, it's kind of like, well, you're in the fight, you're in basically your zone or whatever it is, and then wham, there it goes.
Yeah.
You don't know at the time, afterwards, oh, this is going to go down as one of the best knockouts in all time history. So I don't know. I'm kind of answering it for you beforehand.
Well,
but
there's that, and then the other part about that was I didn't realize that I knocked him out either. So if you watch it, like, I didn't like celebrate or anything. Mm-hmm. I actually landed it so clean that I didn't even know that it landed. I just winged it hard as I could, and he drops down. I thought he was shooting for my leg.
Okay.
You know, and I was kind of like, why are you trying to grab my fucking ankle? Like, if you're gonna shoot, like, grab my hips, you know? And then the referee pushed me off, and I was actually kind of in shock. I was like, what just happened? You know, and my first thought was, oh, they're gonna call early stoppage, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then of course when I rewatched the video, I was like, I remember doing the interview, you know, and they asked, like, you know, they're showing it on the big screen, and I was like, oh shit, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Then the other one, there's like 4 or 5 different questions on this one, right? So you still, what the fuck is up with this Snoop Dogg thing?
Oh. So, I mean, so him and Uriah Faber had a show where they would commentate during the contender fights, the Dana White Contender Series. And Snoop Dogg kind of got into MMA commentating for that. And then when Conor McGregor fought is when Snoop Dogg pissed me off. I think it was when he fought Floyd. And Snoop was, I don't know, drunk or high. I'm sure he's high, you know, whatever he was doing, and had a video of him just calling Conor a bitch. He's like, he's a little pussy and this and that. And it just fucking rubbed me the wrong way, man. I was like, you can't be fucking talking like that, bro. Like, if he was standing next to me talking like that, I'd smack him, you know? So when I went on Joe Rogan's podcast and I was still kind of fired up about it. It was pretty recent, and I was like, bro, like, if I seen Snoop right now, I'd fucking smack him, you know? So, of course, when you say it on Joe Rogan, then everybody's all about it. I mean, I probably wouldn't, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I seen him, you know.
No, but I think that when we were talking earlier, I think that's the respect of the fighters, though.
It is, man.
Right? Because they're in there doing.
It's fucking bullshit, bro.
You know, they're doing a thing, right? And it's a weird, like I said, to me, it's a weird sport. It's a different type of sport. Because it's not like in powerlifting, they try to do this. They try to pit like one lifter against the other lifter. I'm like, the fuck, you know, they're going to show up and they're going to do this is not like, I don't understand how that all works. Because at the end of the day, they're going to go out to dinner. It's, you know, it's
right,
and they're not fighting. I mean, for what you guys do, the limited knowledge of it, you have to have mutual respect for each other, no matter what. Because you're getting in there basically risking everything. There's
always a mutual respect at the end, whether they admit it or not. You know, some guys are sore losers, whatever.
Yeah.
But I guarantee there's a fucking respect. Just like when we were kids and you get into a fight with whoever, and then, you know, your best friends after. There's absolutely that respect. Most of the shit talking stuff, like Conor, you know, is a master of it. You know, it's about getting in the opponent's head.
Yeah.
You know, just like Ali started it. Jack Johnson was actually the first to do it on a large scale, and just get into their head. And if they get, you know, start mentally breaking down a little bit, their physically is gonna fall apart.
Yeah, but that's part of the game. I'm talking after, you know, after the fight, right?
Yeah.
You know, once the adrenaline and the motions and, you know, heals, you know, there's got to be a mutual respect, because the motherfucker got in the ring, right? He did the training, got in the ring, and put everything on the line. Even if they're completely, say you went in, your back's all fucked up, there's still got to be respect, because first off, it's dumb as fuck, right? But then you still did it, and then if you get the shit kicked out of you, well, you still did it. Yeah. How many people would do that?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Now, you got to be smart,
especially at the UFC level. Now that at the lower levels, a lot of people will say that kind of stuff of. Like, well, you know, I respect anybody who gets in there. I don't fucking respect anybody who gets in there. Some people are just fucking idiots that don't need to be in there. You know, by the time you get to like a UFC level, 99% have earned that respect to get in there.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, because there's a big difference there.
There is. Yeah. But now there is a 1% of even the guys in the UFC that probably don't even deserve to be there, that are just fucking dumbasses. And I mean, I personally know some that have been there just solely for the fame. You know, for brand recognition, things like that, which, you know, more power to them, whatever, you know, floats your boat, but it's not going to get respect from me.
Yes. Now let's get into the training, right? Yeah. So it's at some point in time, you know, obviously you didn't train for your very first fights. I mean, you're coked up and shit like that. So I don't see you out, you know, putting in road work or doing any shit like that.
Well, I've always been a runner. Even like I was always a very introverted person. Even when I partied the most, it's kind of crazy, man. I would, you know, do meth and coke. Meth was kind of like my big thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, man, I'd be at a party and I'd just be like, man, fuck everybody here. Like, these are all fucking loser pieces of shit. And I would just, just go for a run.
Yeah.
I'd go do 5 miles or something, you know, not even counting, be gone for 2 hours, come back and like, all right, I need another hit. Let's go. You know?
Yeah.
But that's always been a big thing. But regardless, I wasn't doing real road work. So
No, I know, I get that. I get that. I'm cracking
I thought
up.
that was kind of a funny story.
No, it is a funny story because I've been in the same situation. You know, when I was in high school, like, oh, fuck these people. But you know, I'm not going out and running. I'm just fucking leaving.
I just didn't know what else to do. You know.
Yeah. For me, it was a different situation to where, you know, I was powerlifting at the same time. So that's when I started, was in there, and I wanted to be the best powerlifter I could. I'm like, fuck these people, you know, they're drinking and all this other kind of fuck. I don't want this bullshit. And it would piss me off because, as I told you, I went that route of football. I'm putting in all the training, I'm putting in all this other time. These guys are fucking drinking and all this other kind of like, this is bullshit. And that would piss me off. It's like, fuck these, you know, then, you know, I'd just leave and go be by myself. But maybe I should have went run, you know, but, you know, I didn't have, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where at some point in time, I mean, there's the fight training, which is just the element of the skill, like the time in the gym doing the skill. That to me, that's training as well. Absolutely. That's a big part of your training, that SPP training, whatever it's going to be. At some point, you know, there's a knowledge acquisition. You know, you need to learn more to become better, you know, and that's what we were talking about when you were out last time is, you know, always learning more from that. When did that, say, the weight training come into play out? Because you always had the endurance training, right? Even, you know,
to some extent, yeah.
The meth endurance training. Yeah. And then it was probably
no science behind it, but
no science. Yeah. So then you're in the gym and it's probably more just gym training, not weight training,
on the mats.
The mat training, just over and over and over and over and over. And probably when you started, the weights were just starting to become part of it.
Yeah.
You know, so it was still kind of new. How long did it take you to embrace that?
I embraced it right away.
Really?
Yeah. The reason being was I was on my own in the beginning. I didn't have any real coaches or anything. So the way that I looked at it, the way I kind of still do look at it is, you know, I go to a jiu-jitsu gym, learn the jiu-jitsu. I go to a striking gym, learn striking. But these guys don't know the entire, you know, the full spectrum of training, right?
Yes.
To go find a professional, of course, I didn't have the money to do that. But what I did know was all the knowledge is out there. There's books. I don't think we had any internet back then, but you know, as I grew, that became a thing. But first and foremost, there's books, right? Super Training was one of the first like 10 books I ever got. So when I started training, you know, my thought process was, look, this is something, the cardiovascular and the strength is something I can control on my own. The knowledge is out there. I can go learn it. I can control it. I don't need someone to teach it to me. The jiu-jitsu, the striking, the wrestling, like you have to have someone teach you that. You're not going to figure that out on your own. Yeah. The weight training, the endurance, all that, I can learn that on my own. So I started immediately, again, maybe not immediately, but through that time, I mean, I started getting anatomy books. I started try to get college textbooks. I got ACE certified right away. I was trying to get NSCA certified. I never did finish it. I wanted to do is it CSCS, I think, but I didn't have a bachelor's degree. But anyway, I went and reached for all that knowledge right away. And I still believe that today, right? Like, even if you have a high-level coach, which I do have a great strength and conditioning coach, but what my strength and conditioning coach is really for is that culture. Same as Westside, right? It's about the culture. The knowledge is simple. And when it comes down to it, I think most would agree with this. You could do it wrong at 100%, and it's better than doing it right at 50%, right? Yeah. My entire objective, again, is to squeeze all the juice out of myself, even if I'm doing it wrong. So I have the knowledge, but it only needs to be applied to a certain extent, I think.
So when that started, were you talking a decade ago? Is that roundabout?
At least. I mean, probably 15, so 16, 17 years ago.
What type of periodization model? I mean, what did it look like? Because obviously it wasn't Westside type training. So what was it originally
like? The first thing that I ever started with, actually became really popular long after I started doing it, was the 5-minute circuit training. you know, we have 5-minute rounds. So
Yeah.
I would do 5 minutes of circuits and try to simulate a fight the closest that I could.
Just different exercises that, did you upper body, lower body, or did you just throw five things together?
Again, I try to simulate a fight the best I could, right? So I'd do something, for example, of, like a bench press or overhead press or something for, I keep burping, for 30 seconds, to Turkish get-ups for 30 seconds, to abs, and, you know what I mean? So it would just be usually 30 to 45 seconds a piece, and I would actually always do 6-minute rounds. And I was like, well, if I can do 6, then I can do 5, and the time moving from one exercise to another, you know, and we do sledgehammers, tires, you know.
And how did you progress that? Did you lower rest periods? Did you increase weights? Did you increase time?
To be honest, at the beginning, there wasn't a lot of progression. It was just like, if I'm crawling out of here, I did a good job.
Yeah.
And then I learned more about the periodization. I got Tudor Bompa's book probably right before I was a personal trainer. That's when I actually started periodizing a little bit. And I know, you know, once I got to Westside, you know, they have a completely different concept or a thoughts ideology on periodization. And, you know, so I kind of worked with that a little bit. And
well, let's stay with the Bompa. How did you lay that out? Did you, I mean, because there's different phases,
so that was
right?
that was when I started doing more, I think it was a Bondarchuk also. I got some of his stuff right around that same time, and the Bompa just made it really simple. Bondarchuk made it very complicated, right? So I could do a very general training way out from a fight, and then just get more and more specific. And that was when I stopped doing circuit style like year round and started doing more heavier weights when I'm farther out, and then more endurance and stuff closer to a fight, more circuit style stuff.
Yeah, so strength blocks followed by, you know, kind of working and just classic Bompa, right? So, So after the fight would be basically a hypertrophy block?
I've never been a big hypertrophy, only because
the weight class.
Because I fight at 170, I walk around about 190, and it's a pretty intense cut for me.
Okay, so then it's straight into a strength block, or probably a transitional block, right? Exactly. After the fight, because you're beat the fuck up, you know, and need to rest your mind and everything.
Well, back in the day, I didn't have to rest at all. I would usually train on Monday after the fight, sometimes on Sunday.
Well, that's kind of getting back into the Louie thing here, which we'll get to where that kind of pulls into
at this point in my life, I mean, I have to take a good 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, just to fucking get my head together after a fight, you know?
Yeah, so the Bompa, just say the block periodization, that then moved into, is that when you entered the Westside conjugate type thing?
Yeah, and then I got to Westside, and they
how did that happen?
So a friend of mine was married to Laura Phelps's sister, I guess, or cousin or something, I forget. But either way, he was family with her. He brought me to Westside the first time. I lived right down by Westside. He brought me there. I had no idea what Westside was, which is surprising considering all the research I'd been doing, but I didn't know about Westside. To me, this was just some fucking shitty gym that was for free. So I was like, well, I guess I'll keep coming back. I don't have to pay for it, you know? So I came back a couple of times. And Louie, you know, he was ultra cool to me, of course. I mean, everybody loves fighters.
Now, when you went there, were you the only fighter there?
Well, the first time I was with the other guy was a fighter that introduced me.
Yeah.
And then I was the only fighter. And that was when Tom first came over from Ireland. He was an intern, and he started off by just holding the timer and counting reps for me and stuff, just working with me a little bit. You know, Louie would say, you know, do the belt squat for 5 minutes, and Tom, I'll hold the clock for you. You know, he's just, you know, such a hard worker. He's such a good guy, you know, and we became real good friends, and he started training me full time after that. And I started, as I was there, longer and longer. Because at first when I'm there, again, it's just a shitty gym, you know, I'm like, I don't know who these big fat motherfuckers are walking around here, like, you know, but they're not fighters. I know that much. So, but then eventually I kind of start, like, in my head, I'm looking at the weights they're moving, and I'm like, well, what the fuck is this place? Like, you know, at first I didn't really pay attention, but then I'm like, wait a minute, is that fucking 1,000 pounds on that bar? Like, who are these motherfuckers, right? And then this is around the time, I guess, the internet kind of started becoming a thing, and I would Google Louie and stuff, and I was like, holy shit, this is where I'm at? Like, I'm in the fucking world-renowned place? And then I started you know, hanging out at the office and stuff, and talking with Louie more, reading the books, and
So
just
how
went from
did
there.
how did he? Because when I was there, he'd have athletes come in, and they still had the max effort, they still had the dynamic effort. It wasn't, contrary to what people think, it wasn't the same thing that we were doing as powerlifters. It was different, but the main components were still part of that. So was that still the case? You were still doing max effort, probably on the same days they were. So you're still doing max effort work,
Monday, Tuesday.
you know, maybe not with them, but probably you were. And then the dynamic work. Did he change the dynamic exercises for you? So they rotated from maybe a bench to an overhead to.
So Louie would come up with all kinds of crazy exercises.
Yeah.
I mean, things that were just fucking nuts. You know, I mean, you know, Louie.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it wasn't long that me and Tom just started doing our own thing. You know, and we're like, we love Louie. Obviously, we respect knowledge and everything, but we kind of need to do things a little different. So Tom started training me personally and privately, and it was just me and him. And for a while there, I was doing the 4 days a week. I was doing max effort Monday, Tuesday, dynamic Thursday and Friday, and still training in the evening time. It didn't take long that for me personally, I think I'd kind of reached my max. I mean, obviously you can always
the training max that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like the absolute strength for your sport.
Yeah, and I think I mean you can always progress, right? But it's
Yes.
like, okay, how much energy do I want to put into putting 5 pounds on my bench press, right?
Yeah.
And all my weaknesses had kind of developed into strengths, and like I had really weak hips when I started there, weak glutes, weak core, and then we built all that up, and that was when things kind of started to change, right? And then we started doing.
How long did it take for you to build that up?
I'd say 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
At least.
All right. So then started to
least.
change.
This started changing. We started doing a lot more, lots and lots of, I guess what people would consider like a GPP style, like we pull, you know, sleds around. But we do a lot of like mixed kind of stuff too, like pull a sled while carrying farmer's handles or a wheelbarrow and a sled at the same time. We used a bamboo bar like this while pulling a sled. I'd pull a sled with my neck. I mean, we did tons and tons of sled work. That was probably, I'd say 80% of the time. So kind of not really phased out the max effort. Usually we would max, but keep it short and quick.
Yeah.
And then rather than doing the accessory exercises, we'd move into GPP.
Yes.
And then the accessories would be back, core, calves, ankles, wrists, neck, the smaller things.
Yeah. Well, one of the criticisms of, you know, Louie and Westside and Conjugate is it's not phasic, where what you just laid out was, yes, it is. There was 3 or 4 months of building the base. And then once that base is built, weak points are, you know, brought up. Now it's getting into that specificity and the maintenance of that. And the max effort, everything's based upon absolute strength. So the max effort staying in just enough that it needs to stay in so it doesn't drop, right? Because how much do you need to really be able to squat? How much you need to, because you go too high, then there's risk.
Well, and that was kind of what had happened was, even though I was young at that time, the problem became my other training sessions were being compromised, right? Because I was putting so much into getting stronger. The other training sessions were just starting to lose value. So I said, okay, we got to change this up. So like I said, I was doing 4 days a week and training other places at, you know, 5-6 times a week, you know, so I'm doing, you know, 12, 13, 14 sessions a week. You know, it's just way too much. At this age, I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't even do what I did back then. There's no fucking way. At that time, my body was able to handle it, but it started to break down slowly, and then some injuries started creeping up and popping out and things. So then we had to adjust everything, and we started moving more towards 2 to 3 days of dynamic work and maybe 1 day of max effort. We didn't even force the max effort. It was like, okay, if you feel good, and because it was really about, it wasn't even so much about the weight that we're moving anymore. It's about the CNS activation, right? And the stability. And things like that. Learning how to brace your body and,
absorb force.
yeah, more things like that. And the dynamic work was what was really building a structure for me. Yeah, which I think, is just far more important for a fighter anyway.
And how long were you there for?
I think it was about 4 years, and then I moved to Denver.
All right, before we get there, what were some of the other things that you learned from Louie while being there?
I go back to the culture part, man, always. That's always where I start. Like, the number one thing that I got out of Westside was the culture. I mean, you just can't duplicate it. I mean, I think they say always imitated, never duplicated, right? And it just can't be duplicated. I mean, I would walk in that gym and fucking feel an energy that you just can't feel anywhere else. And I didn't realize it until I moved away.
Well, you take it for granted, it becomes norm.
Yeah, it became normal, right?
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the training partners, and I wasn't progressing in my martial arts side of things. I only had the weight training basically.
Yeah.
And that can't be the only thing that you have. So I went to find more training partners and a more holistic system. But I realized really quickly what Westside meant.
Yeah, well, it's more, I think we were talking a little bit earlier, it's more than just the weights and that environment and it's all the other thing. It's, Louie's mentality, as whacked as he is, there was a mentality, he made everybody read 5 rings, which, which you said that he turned you on to that
Absolutely.
as well,
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of lessons in there, but now when you look back on his life and you look at that, you can see, how a lot of those principles were in that man, lived, died by all those, which was important because I think a lot of that created, that culture, right? That was in there, and people just be balls to the wall, but at the same time, as you're saying, it can be, destructive, if the beast isn't controlled, which is essentially any training, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So then you went to Denver, and how did that? What was the reason to go to Denver, I guess, and then what was the training when you were there?
Yeah, so Muscle Farm had a facility there, and they basically wanted to start a fight team, so they paid a bunch of athletes, me, TJ Dillashaw, the Elevation Fight team, Neil Magny, Gagey was in and out, a lot of guys. They basically just paid us they had a state-of-the-art facility, just a gigantic, fucking beautiful facility, and they were paying us to be there and train, so...
This is all inclusive, so it's got the mats and it's got everything that you need under one roof.
Everything.
What was it like going from Westside to that?
Yeah, it was immediately a culture shock. I didn't realize that this wasn't everywhere, right? Because it's all I knew. In terms of professional weight training, this was all that I knew was Westside. And I'm like, well, I could do this anywhere, and I get out there and I was like, it's a culture shock, man. It was really surprising. Now there's some very smart people out there, like Lauren Landau, my guy, Chris, I forget his last name. I worked with him a lot. Just some really, really good guys and smart guys. But again, that culture was not there. And that's what I kind of been preaching the whole time, is like, you can't replace that, and it can't be duplicated, and that's the most meaningful thing you can have in a gym.
Yeah, but you had to make it work because that's where you're at, right? So a lot of the culture still has to come from yourself.
Well, I did, yeah, exactly, and I did. What happened when I moved out there is I would say maybe I kind of slacked on my weight training and just replaced it. Maybe not even slacked, but I just replaced a lot of that with more martial arts training. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but but after living out there for 3 years and slowing my weight training down, I did realize how important it really is.
What did you notice, physically through fighting or training or whatever? When you said that you noticed the importance of it, how did you feel that?
So what I noticed was my technique did go up.
Yes.
Right? Like I was, in technique-wise, I was a better fighter.
Yeah.
To get through a fight, because a fight is, you could be in the best shape in the world in the gym, but when you're in a fight, it's a different kind of condition. You can't replicate that in gym. I can't go 1,000% against someone in the gym, right? We're just gonna knock each other out, get hurt, and it's not gonna last. But I can replicate that on the weights. Like I can push my body on the weights until I can't move anymore, right? Safely. I can push my muscles as far as they can possibly go safely. I can't do that on the mats. So my technique got better, but I'd say my max capacity maybe got lower. So therefore my fighting did suffer, you know, to some extent. And even on the martial arts side, it was a completely different culture for me. So I wouldn't say I regret it because I got exposed to an entire new culture of martial arts, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah. And then from there, where did you go?
I just moved back and just opened my own facility. And I was training at Westside for a while. When I came back, Tom was coaching us, and then Tom had his baby. Tom got too busy running Westside. Louie sick. I mean, there's just tons of things that happen, and our little fight crew at Westside just kind of wasn't what it once was, and I wasn't feeling it no more. So now I train with Dustin Myers out of Max Effort training facility, and he has brought a whole new level of intensity. Man, I mean, he's just the best, man. I kind of wish I would have went out there a lot longer ago. Just because he does all the workouts with you, you know, he's going to compete with you, he's going to push you, and just the overall vibe, man. That's what it's all. Again,
It's a culture.
I can't say that enough, right? That is what fucking matters.
Yeah. So what's the training look like now? I mean, is it conjugate based? Is it block based?
It's pretty similar. The only difference is we do a lot more high intensity cardio training, and I do a lot more. Now that my ankle's better, I do a lot more low intensity cardio aerobic training also. But with him, we do a lot of high intensity like sprints and aerodyne sprints, which we didn't do at Westside ever. I'd have to do that shit on my own. So that's something he added in. And again, when you got someone pushing you to do that, you know, that culture is completely different, and the feeling is different, the vibe is different, and you get more out of yourself. You squeeze more juice out of yourself, and that's what it's all about, man.
Oh, exactly. So you got 15 years, you know, of training, and without talking about the martial arts skills and stuff like that. If say you got a hold of you, you know, 10 years ago, right? So 5 years in, how would you advise that person to go about their strength and conditioning? Not the
there'd be a lot of fucking advice. Where do you start, right?
Well, what not to do, right? So let's start with not.
So you don't need to follow the blueprint of what most people think you do, like bench press, deadlift, squat. Even though those are important and you should be able to perform them properly, deadlift particularly. It's just there's so many other ways to get the advantages of a deadlift far safer. And I would say, you know, get with a professional straight away. Don't try to learn it on your own. Do your research, right? Like read the books, fucking, you know, watch YouTube, all that stuff. There's so much information out there now. You have no excuse, right, not to have that knowledge. But, you know, like, for example, deadlift. Learn deadlift. Know how to do it right. But that's not what's going to make you a better fighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what's going to make you a better fighter is being in the gym. What I see strength and conditioning as is a supplement. Just like if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, you have to take protein drinks.
Yeah.
Right? That's a supplement. But if you don't never take a protein drink in your life, you could absolutely still be a world champion bodybuilder, right? So like, it's like, I don't necessarily have to. I know a lot of guys that don't do any strength and conditioning at all and are very good. So maybe not advising myself, because the strength and conditioning does a lot for me personally. But if I was going to advise someone else, I would say know yourself first. Some people don't need it. Some people don't need the heavy weights. Some people don't need sprints and endurance training quite as much. There's other ways to accomplish those things. Some people absolutely, their bodies are going to fail without it.
Well, there's a balance there too, right? Where if their skills suck, you know, they probably don't need to be spending 2 hours in the gym.
That would be another part. Yeah.
Yeah, where I want to talk about your skill development too, because I'm sure you've had to travel all over, you know, to be able to learn. There's so many aspects that go into MMA. It's mixed martial arts, right? So there's a lot of mix, you know. So where have you traveled? You know, what have you done? You know, as far as that goes, because that's never ending, right? I mean, the strength and condition, you kind of figure it out. You know what you need to do to auto regulate for yourself, where that threshold is. Where now you got an infinity, you know, of. So how did you, and how do you, because you're still doing this, manage that?
So I've been around to a lot of different places. I've learned from a lot of amazing, great coaches over the years. And what I've learned, I think it's probably about the same as you would say in powerlifting, right? It's sort of a Dunning-Kruger thing, right? Like you kind of, you know, you start off not knowing nothing, and then you learn the basics, and then you go too far and start experimenting with this and all this other bullshit, and then you come back and you realize, oh, my basics aren't good enough yet. And that's kind of where I'm at these days. I'm like, my 90% of my focus is on how do I get a better jab, how do I get better footwork, how do I get better straight punches, right? Not how do I learn another spinning technique. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see a lot of people make. There's too much variation and the fundamentals are lost.
Does that come with the different coaches, though?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you go to all these different coaches, and you realize what they're really. When you have a really good coaches, the ones with successful athletes, and you see. I mean, Louie is a perfect example, right? Like, I mean, he's got all kinds of crazy exercise stuff, but everything's really fucking simple, right? The fundamental ideology of the conjugate system is simple as fuck. Right? You can learn it. I could write it on the board and teach you in 10 minutes. And this is, you go to all these great coaches, and I've seen the greatest coaches with the most successful athletes, and then you watch those athletes, and what are they doing? They're doing the fundamentals better than everyone else. Now, they break some rules, and that's where Louie, again, is such a brilliant guy. Is like, I think he was the one who told me, he said, you have to break the rules, you have to know the rules.
Yes.
Right? But you can't break them until you know them and master them.
Yes.
Right? After that, then now you're wide open.
You don't know what you don't know until you know enough.
Right. That's a good way to put it, yeah. I mean, and if you watch, you know, a boxing match, which is a very simple combat sport, right? You're just trying to punch a guy. What do the best boxers all have in common? A great jab. You watch the best in history. They all have great jabs. And now you're going to see them do some amazing things, right? Some amazing combos, some footwork, all this stuff. But it all starts with that jab. You know, and I think it's the same in everything, right? It all starts with this one thing. When you do that perfectly, then your world becomes open, and you can expand your creativity.
How do you, because I'm sure it's the same as in MMA as it is in strength sports and everything else. How do you filter out the bullshit coaches, right? Because there's a lot of coaches that think their way is the only way. Like, come train with me, I'll make you the greatest, right? And a lot of them are that way, right? And a lot of them are just fucking posers and aren't worth a shit. But to the newer fighter coming in, or the newer, you know, power lifter coming up, they don't know how to filter that out, because normally the biggest voices, you know, online and everything else, are the biggest dipshits.
For sure.
You know, so you've had to, fortunately you kind of came in before all that noise was there, but at some point in time you've had to learn how to settle the noise, you know, from all that, to kind of remove the posers from that. But I'm sure new ones still emerge, you know, new things still pop all the time. And then you got a bullshit detector that comes right out. So how would that fighter?
I think the first thing would be, I think you would agree with this. The first thing is when they're humble and open to admit that they don't know everything.
Yeah.
Right. When I go to Dustin, for instance, I teach him things, you know, and he's not like, oh, well, we do it this way. You know what I mean? And that not only creates the, that doesn't just tell me, okay, he's probably a good coach. He's open to a suggestion. it also creates a respect,
Yes.
right? Like, because I'm not a dipshit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, if you're just a dipshit, then, you know, I guess you're kind of fucked anyway, right?
Yeah,
You're just
well, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But there's
yeah.
a lot of those.
But that goes back to what we were talking about. It's up to the athlete to teach themselves. I mean, this isn't a new concept.
To some extent, yeah.
You know, well,
Yeah.
they should educate themselves, if
I
anything.
think so, yeah.
You know, to at least be able to filter out the bullshit.
It kind of takes me off guard when guys don't educate themselves. I'm like, how much do you really care about this shit?
Well, they tell you they do,
Right.
but do they?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That's going
Yeah.
into that mindset type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
if you really,
Because I can
Yeah.
I can only look at my own self, and I bet you were a lot like this. When I first got into this shit, and it hasn't slowed down a lot today, but when I first got into this, I could not stop thinking about martial arts and fighting. I could not stop thinking about it. Like, if I was at dinner with a beautiful woman, I'd be sitting there like, what am I doing here? Like, I should be fucking training. Like, yeah, well, you know. If I was, I mean, there's nothing. I could not get my mind off of it, no matter what was going on in the world. Like I had no idea that there was a political scene in the world. Like, I didn't even know who the fucking president was, you know. And now these guys are all like, you see so many like, activists, or you know, you see them partying, and I'm like, you're going down, bro. Like, your time is coming. You know, your talent might be holding you now, but you're gonna fucking fail, man, because
Yes.
you're not obsessed.
yes.
And I'm not a special athlete. I'm not a fucking amazing talent. I didn't walk into a gym and they say, oh, this is the guy, he's going to be in the UFC. But I was so obsessed and dedicated and stubborn that my life was not going to turn out any other way. And I didn't even know it at the time. I thought that this was just, you know, the way that this shit is, you know. And again, I'm sure you can relate to a lot of
100%.
that, right?
Oh, 100%. That's why you look at the sports psychology books, you're looking at visualization, well, you know, the mindset, mental, you know, I'm sure you've done the same thing.
Oh,
you
yeah.
gotta go through, you know, different mental training techniques,
Absolutely.
You know, and visualization, and how to find calm and violence, you know, because, you know, for me with the maximum weight, I put myself in a violent state, but when it actually comes time, you know, to descend with the weight, I have to be in a calm state so I can react to whatever is going to fuck up.
That's interesting.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because you
yeah.
can't stay in that violent state, because if your mind's screaming the whole, I'm sure it's the same thing if you're, you know, getting fucking choked out or you're at the bottom. You can't be in this huge aggressive state. You got to process way too much shit. Like,
Very
what's
good
going on
point.
with my foot? Wait, where's this? Where's this? Where's the opening? You know, if I'm going down with a weight and it's moving forward, I got to know how to correct. You know, I got to know what to do. But I have to still be in that aroused state, you know, so the violence before the calm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So otherwise you don't have control. And if you don't have control, what happens?
That's an amazing way to say it.
You know, the
yeah.
weight has control, or your opponent has control.
Yeah.
You know, so all that is an acquired skill, you know, where if they're not looking at that and, you know, or practicing that, and experience provides that, you know, to put that out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so you're a way better fighter today than you were many years
It's funny
ago.
you say that, because I actually got in an argument with I think it's a pretty prominent MMA journalist. I got in an argument with him on Twitter, and he was talking about how MMA is violent. And to me, there's no violence at all about it. And I guess, like, there technically is. Like, I kind of conceded. I was like, I guess it's kind of violent. But
Well, it's how they would define it.
yeah. But as to me, I'm like, it's literally a chess match. You know, like, I'm just trying to touch you before you touch me. You know, like, that's to me, that's not violence at all.
But the training over a period of years, it has to become. I want to sit there and say you should think 5 moves ahead, right?
Absolutely.
Which you do, but that changes really, really quick, you know. And the longer that you do it, and the more experience that comes, the more automatic that becomes. That doesn't become automatic without the practice, without the skill, you know, without the mental acuity, and visualization can play into that. You know, the mental, you know, just thinking about it all the time. You know, as you said, you're thinking about it all the time. That's a form of visualization without even you knowing it.
Okay.
You know, because you're
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about it, right? If he does this, what am I going to do? Right? And then it's like, I'll do this. Well, what if that don't work? I'm going to do this, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
play
yeah.
this mental chess game in your head all the time. And it's like, okay, well, your mind just did it. You know, so then over and over and over, you put 10 years behind that.
And you don't even realize it, right?
And well, yeah, you know, so it's finding that in there. So with the mental side, you know, what have you done throughout the years to be able to help with not just the visualization, the meditation, but also I always say that there's a big mental component. You already kind of touched on it a little bit, to where the first thing you need to do is reduce the noise. Right? So get rid of the fucking negative people, get rid of the news, get rid of the distractions, just what's important, focus on that, because that's noise.
Yeah.
Right? So as you were saying, with, you know, people getting caught up in politics, all this other kind of stuff, and they're fighters, they are. You know, they're going down that path where they're losing that. So that aside, right, just because everybody should know that. I mean, to me, that should kind of make sense, but probably it doesn't, you know, for most people. What things have you tried, you know, mentally to help and didn't work, did work? I don't think anything never not works, because you learn what didn't work.
Okay. Yeah. To be honest, you know, I read a great book called In Pursuit of Excellence, one of the greatest sports psychologist books I ever read. And I tried to listen to it, but the dude's voice is terrible.
No, I get it. No, you got to read that one. I know what you're talking about.
And the whole book was about focus, right? What are you focused on? That's where you get the juice. And to me, it's still probably the most powerful book out there. And I don't think I have to necessarily try. You know, like, I'm focused on. I think a lot of that. Maybe other people do have that problem, where they do get drawn away really easily. I mean, and again, I'm not a dumb person, right? So it's easy for me to get involved in other things and let that take my focus away really quickly. Even like I said, I was remodeling my basement this week, and you know, but it's my downtime right now. And it's actually a positive thing for me, to clear my mind so I can be more focused when the time is to be more focused, right? But it's very easy for me to do that. Like, I can shut down everything very easily.
We could flip this back, though, and say that, you know, remodeling your basement is kind of like ring one. You know, building the house.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back to the leadership discipline, all that, like, which board are you going to use, which board are you not going to use?
Well, that's kind of, I think, you know, to get deeper on that ring one, that's sort of the purpose of doing it, right? It's like, the nicer that area is and the better it makes me feel, the more clear my mind will be, right?
Yes. So you got to master many things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and on the same token, I mean, I could just paid somebody to do it too, and not had to have any focus on it. But that's where my problem is, knowing how to do it, knowing I'm very good at construction. I'm going to be down there. It's going to be worse for me, because I'm going to be down there like, why the fuck you doing that, bro? That ain't the way to do it. You know,
I could kind of come back at you, though, and say that as you're doing it, you're perfecting a skill that you've already had. You know, as you do one thing, you'll do everything, right? So that is still keeping the blade sharp.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
I hope that's true.
Well, yeah.
And I think that it is, but
yeah.
But, you know, I would just, I'm just saying, you know, like, I could have just paid somebody.
Yeah, now you get closer to a fight, things are different.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Like, I was remodeling my bedroom last year, and then got called for a fight, and I had to stop. You know, and it was kind of sucked a little bit. Like, I didn't have the trim up and didn't have some of the paint done, and I'm in a fight camp now. And ended up just finishing it recently, actually.
How long do those camps last for you?
I try to do a minimum of 10 weeks. I prefer 12 to 14. And back in the day, I could do 6 or 8, which is fine, I think, for most camps. The problem now is, like, I have kids and businesses, so I have to set up a system within those few weeks to have all that focus taken away from me.
Now, do you go someplace else, or do you just mentally frame that camp and that's what you're doing?
Yeah. When I say camp, basically, there's not really a such thing as camp.
No, I get it.
But I use the term so that when I'm speaking to you, when I'm speaking to my business partners, when I'm speaking to my family and stuff, like, I'm in camp, leave me alone.
And that's where the focus is. So it's,
you
know, prep would be what a bodybuilder would call it, or
or you could call it that, a focus time, you know, camp focus. because that's all it really is. I mean, I'm training all the time. I'm 2 times a day, probably over 300 days a year. But when I'm in camp, so I go to the gym tonight. Like I'm actually going to teach kids class tonight, and then I'm going to train a little bit and hang out, and we'll have a fun time, have my little social hour. But in camp, I'm not going to teach a kids class. I'm not going to communicate with you guys after. I'm not going to have a social hour. I'm not going to ask the members how they're doing today. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to eat my food. I'm going to go to bed early, and life will be a little different.
All right, now to parlay this into business, right? So you have the coffee company, right, which Immortal Coffee, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Right there. And then the gym, I mean, with
Yep.
studio, martial arts studio. What do you call it? I mean,
It's a gym. I call it a gym.
A gym.
Yeah, I like that term better. The martial arts studio. Some people call it academy or martial arts studio. The academy is certainly a good name for it because that implies that it is a school that you are coming to learn knowledge. But I call it more of a gym because to me that's you go and work.
Yeah.
Yes. For the normal members, I'd usually say like the academy,
that
right?
Makes
Because
sense.
you're coming to learn some knowledge, right?
Yes.
And you're trying to grow as a human being. I'm going to fuck some shit up, and I have to keep that mentality, right? Now, I do go and attempt to acquire knowledge, all right? Like that's still a part of it too, but that's the toughest part about owning a gym. For the most part of my career, when I go into a gym, as soon as I step in, my mind flips that switch. Right, I know you understand this, and that was again in Westside, right? Like this is the most beautiful thing. You walk in.
When I train here, I gotta leave and I have to come back.
Okay, you get what I'm saying,
Yes,
don't you?
yes.
Yeah. I have to flip that switch, and like you said, when you have your own place, that's a little more difficult, especially. And see, I'd never really been in normal gyms, academies, martial arts studios much before. And once you own a gym, you realize it's a customer service business is what it is. It's, you can call it a gym, an academy, whatever you want. It's a fucking customer service business. Most of the people are coming for me. So it becomes very difficult when I'm in camp and I'm focused and they just want to see me train or whatever. And I'm like, bro, fucking leave me alone. Get the fuck out of here, So again, everything is a system, right? And that's all I have to do is build a system. So when I get into camp, I don't train during the regular times when everybody else is training. I have my own time, and then I can bleed on the mats and not have some 17-year-old girl say, oh, what's that, or and I can sweat. I can take my shirt off, and the soccer moms aren't going to be watching. And
So how did the coffee thing come about? Let's get into that.
Okay,
first.
so that's a pretty simple, actually. My business partner, Connor, he had a different coffee company. He was sending me coffee as a sponsorship, and I'd never really been into coffee much before that. But when he was sending it to me, I was just like, bro, this is the fucking best coffee I ever had, man. Like, I didn't know that, like, coffee like this existed. And he actually brought it to me. He said, well, Immortal Coffee has a nice ring to it, don't it? I said, yeah. Let's fucking do it, man.
It is fucking good. I mean,
it's fucking good, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I've learned, there's 3 grades of coffee. There's like regular, I can't remember the 3 different names, but there's basically regular, there's the mid to high range, and then there's the premium. And ours is premium. And what they do is these coffee taste tests, and these people are like professional fucking coffee tasters. And I went to one of these sittings, and I can't remember the fucking names of it and shit, but I went to one of these sittings and did the coffee taste test. There's a whole process just to taste in it and everything. And so ours is graded above, I believe it's 90, and it's 0 to 100, and I think up to 70 is like the regular stuff, and then 70 to 90 is the midders. And my business partner Connor could elaborate on this far more than me, and I'm probably not hitting the numbers exactly right, but either way, our coffee is all the way at the top, and it's not easy to find that.
How long have you had this?
3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's fun, man. Like, you know, we get a lot of great reviews from it, and
I just saw on your
it's
Instagram when I was
good.
looking the other day, there was like a grinder or something like that where you guys only have 2. There's 2,
Yeah.
but there's only so many.
I think there's 10 of those in the country still.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
you
an
guys have
old
2.
school.
So
Yeah,
that's-
we have 2 of them.
Yeah.
It's an old school grinder. The process is a lot different. It's not like computerized and all that shit. It's a manual, old school. And that's what we do, man. We get the best beans and we fucking roast it the best way, the traditional way, and
That's awesome.
That's all
So
we-
yeah,
yeah.
so buy some Immortal Coffee. There you go,
Yeah.
right. So
and next we're looking at doing energy shots.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the next venture for the coffee part.
Okay.
So I want to make a pre-workout actually is what I'm thinking we're gonna do.
A pre-workout from the coffee company or from a different.
It'd be, you know, the same company, but
Yeah.
it'd be a energy shot pre-workout.
I got it.
Which you don't see these, you know. You see the 5-hour energy, but
Yeah.
not a pre-workout. It's a beta-alanine, some creatine maybe if we can get that in there, some citrulline. Yeah.
So now we'll get back to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, so we talked about when you started it. It was when you were injured, you know, and that was the catalyst behind starting it. But what else was behind that? I mean, was it for you to have a place to train for yourself, or was it for you to be able to teach others? I mean, it's a little bit of both, but
Just wondering how personal I should get here.
as personal as you want. Man. I don't get it. It's
Yeah,
up to you,
well,
man.
that's what I'm debating in my head. So I'll just get all the way, whatever. I opened it for me and my wife, for her to have a business, and I'd be on the mats all day. And then we got divorced like 6 months later. So it just became mine.
Okay.
So-
All right. There, you go. So,
But that was the original
but it was
intention.
for you to have a place to go and just not
Yeah,
have
'cause-
to deal with all the bullshit.
Well,
and-
I was considering retiring at the time and had everything played out the way it would have in my head. I probably would have retired because I was just going to teach all day.
Okay. So
That was
post
it.
post fighting, right? This was what you had planned in your
Yes.
head
Yeah,
anyhow.
yeah,
so it
yeah.
just came
Yeah.
a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
Than
And I
what
think
you
that's the
want.
first time I've ever been toyed by that. Like, that's kind of, you know, a little bit deep, I guess, you know, personal wise, but who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah, but it's well, it's showing you right now. I mean, is it what you thought it was going to be? Now, forget about
So-
not being able to train, you know, because I get that.
Right,
Any
right.
gym owner gets that. So just forget about that for a minute. Is working with the kids more than you thought it was going to be, or
Yeah, so that was the biggest difference between what was in my head versus the reality of what happened. Once we started training kids, we didn't have a kids class at first. I just didn't have an instructor for it, and I didn't think that I was capable of doing kids class. But once we started training kids, that's all I started caring about, because that is by far the most fulfilling part of having a gym. I think I told you a story last time I hung out, and I'll tell it again, you know, so other people can hear it. I remember one specific kid that really just completely changed my whole perspective of everything. He came in the first day. We only had maybe like 4 or 5 kids in the class that time, and he comes in, his head's down, he's scared. His mom's like, you know, he's getting bullied at school. I can't get him no self-esteem, no confidence. You know, this kid's just, you know, he comes home crying and all this and that. He wouldn't shake my hand, wouldn't look me in my eyes. It wasn't even 2 months later. I walk in and the kid's like bumping knuckles with me, chest puffed out, and he just wants to train, and has actually got a little bit of skill, you know. It's like, I mean, he's a young kid, you know, so he's only got so much, but he's picked it up real quick, and you could just see the change. And that just, my business created a fork in this kid's life. You know what I mean? He was going this way, and he just took a fucking fork this way. Right? And that's going to be with him for the rest of his life. And to know that something I did could have such a just profound change in a kid's life is nothing makes you feel better about yourself, you know? Like, there's nothing more fulfilling that's ever happened to me. My own kids, they don't have problems, you know, like they're tough kids, and they're proud of themselves, you know. So I never seen that with them. But when I seen this kid, and then I'll tell you even more intense story. A dad comes in. And see, these are the kinds of things I didn't realize I was getting into when I opened a gym. His dad, he comes in, trains, you know, 2-3 times a week, you know, very, very quiet. Never really talked to anyone or anything. So one day, you know, I'm just sitting talking to him. I think we started talking about like his membership or something, you know, some business shit. And I'm talking to him, and I was like, yeah, you know, like what are you trying to do? You trying to fight? You trying to compete? Or what? He's like, no. He's like, I just need this place. He said, you know, this means a lot to me. And I was like, yeah, you know, what's going on with it? You know, just trying to help the guy. This guy, his son, 14 years old, committed suicide. And he took the rope off his neck. He walks into his house, into his son's room, and takes the rope off his own son's neck. And my gym is what got him through the day. He said, he straight looked at me in my eyes and said, I need this. This was now I remember the whole story. This was right during the COVID lockdowns. Mm-hmm. He said, I need this place. And I said, I'm not fucking closing down. Mm-hmm. Fuck our fucking government. Mm-hmm. You ain't making me close down when I got people like this. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's how powerful it is. And you're going to tell me that I got to close my fucking business down, but you're going to let Home Depot be open or whatever. Who cares
Mm-hmm.
if they do? And just knowing that you have that kind of effect on human life, like as every time I have the struggles with the gym, every time that some days I just feel like fucking closing it and walking away. I remember moments like that, and I said, this is fucking worth it.
How's that moment compared to the victory in the ring?
Victory in the ring is nothing. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It's fun, but I also go in like planning to win, right? Like I train to win, you know? Losing sucks. That's what, again, I wouldn't doubt that it's much different in powerlifting, right? Mm-hmm. Losing is the bottom of the fucking floor, you know, 6 feet deep. Like you just feel like killing yourself. You're like, I don't know what I do that shit for. Winning is like somewhere in the middle. It's like, yeah, it's cool. Mm-hmm. I did what I was planning on doing. That was what I came to do.
It's fleeting.
There you go.
It's cool for that day, that night.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later.
Well, you know, yeah, people, you want to celebrate and stuff. You know, you go out and everybody's like, yeah, fucking great job, man. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But then,
okay, well, I got to do another one soon, so.
Yeah, changing someone's life's a different thing.
It's so different, man.
Right? So that actually, I mean, that didn't just start, you know, a couple years ago. That started with a kid that was getting his ass kicked many, many years ago. Mm. You know, it's fighting is what pulled you into, helped you discover you, that passion that we talked about, that fire.
Yeah.
And here you are now, you know, in a position to be able to give that fire to other people, you know, which is, I live by a model of live, learn, pass on, you know, like so all that time of learning, acquiring those skills and knowledge. And now you find yourself in this position to where you're able to be a catalyst, you know, for those people as somebody was when you're 21, you know, for you, and possibly doing it before all that bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, that's power, man.
That is much power. And I didn't realize you hear a lot of people talk about the martial arts, how powerful they are and stuff. And I didn't realize that shit because I was a fighter. I wasn't really a martial artist. I was like, I went to a gym to train for a fight. I never went for, you know, the fucking honor and the discipline. I was like, dude, I don't give a fuck. Like, I just want to fight, man.
But look what look what you're walking away with, though.
And that's what you're walking away with. You don't even realize it.
Yes.
And again, I make so many analogies to powerlifting. It's very similar. One guy's going to need the martial arts. Another guy's going to need to get in the fucking iron. Mm-hmm.
It's just putting the right people in front of the other people to be that catalyst. And that's what you're doing, you know? So thank you for being on, man. It's how do people get a hold of you? We got the Immortal Coffee, the Immortal, you're all over, you're on Instagram, kinda, You know, I mean, you post when you can.
Man, I forget to post is my
That's
problem.
all right. That's all right. Right. And we'll put all the links in the description box and everything. And I want to thank you for coming out. This has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're out.